As a consumer, I'm unlikely to broaden anyone's expectations of what a millennial looks like. I'm unmarried, childless, 30-something, and as of March 2022, a first-time homeowner. I am, however, part of a growing trend. Adults ages 26 to 41 accounted for 51% of all new mortgage applications last year. While this may seem like a long overdue generational settling down, I suspect it has more to do with skyrocketing rent. What challenges are this new wave of consumers facing? Stay tuned. Before last year, I can't say that I ever had any serious aspirations of homeownership. With real estate inventory at historic lows, I knew in the back of my mind that any home in my budget would likely be older construction, in need of what Zillow euphemistically calls sweat equity. I knew very little about home maintenance, and I didn't have a reason to learn. Anything that malfunctioned in my apartment was handled with a phone call, from leaky pipes to burned out light bulbs. I probably would have carried on with this life of learned helplessness indefinitely, but my plans changed as I neared the end of my last lease term. My property management company announced their intention to raise the rent on my modest one-bedroom apartment by about 30%, a figure that awakened my inner Laura Ingalls Wilder. After duking it out with a horde of other displaced millennials in a brutal housing market, my covered wagon finally came to rest in rural North Carolina, next to some charming yet quirky 1920s construction. Armed only with YouTube tutorials and asinine confidence, I took on a series of renovation projects that required countless visits to practically every big box home improvement retailer in my region. In a market where 80% of homes are at least 20 years old and 34% of DIY home improvement projects are done by people under age 34, first-time homeowners have become a market worth serving. On behalf of all of my peers who recently traded Sunday brunches for long walks through Home Depot, here's what I want retailers and manufacturers to know. Before my closing date, I visited a big box home improvement store exactly once in my adult life, and it was to buy supplies for a patio herb garden that I immediately overwatered. When I returned earlier this year with a list of the tools and materials I plan to use to retile my kitchen, I was at a loss. These stores tend to be enormous, and they feel overrun with pro contractors and seasoned DIYers who know exactly what they need and where to find it. I had questions that were bigger than the location of particular products within the aisles. I was kind of that customer, the one that needs a lot of hand-holding and ultimately spends far less money than a pro shopper. Retailing staffing shortages were an issue in nearly every store I visited. This, combined with the fact that I look like someone who would accuse an associate of mansplaining grout in a McSweeney's essay, meant that I was largely on my own in the aisles. Unlike pros and high-level DIYers, novices like myself are on a two-part journey, choosing the right product and then figuring out how to use it. As human interaction becomes increasingly rare in big box stores, the most successful brands are the ones that provide demos, visualization tools, and how-to content in the aisle or via QR code. While getting assistance from a knowledgeable employee is still absolutely my preference, I really came to appreciate the brands that shouldered the burden of consumer education with their packaging and display materials. Next, sell me projects, not products. DIYers are in love with the result, not the process. I can only assume that's why the previous owners of my house painted over the kitchen cabinets without first sanding or priming them at all. Because to the uninitiated, the only thing standing in between you and white cabinets is a bucket of paint. So YouTube is king for learning basic steps of most home improvement projects, and it's also how I would create my shopping list for the hardware store. But what surprised me was just how many options existed in practically every product category. Without having a good sense of when brand mattered and when it didn't, my selections were mostly based on price. This is different, however, for sponsored how-to videos that showcase their own products. Even though I'm typically a very cost-conscious shopper, I'll pay more for branded products if they're specifically recommended for a project. Because we're essentially following a recipe, novice DIYers won't risk making a substitution for fear that they'll endanger the end result. I probably would have bought premium branded shop rags if they were suggested to me. Project-based thinking also influences how first-time DIYers navigate the aisles. When you're unfamiliar with the layout of a big box store, it's great to encounter like a bay or an end cap that stocks all the items you need for a job right there next to each other. I know there were times when I overpaid for expendables like paintbrushes just to avoid wandering around the store comparing prices. Number 3, don't rely on me to have any kind of prior knowledge. The instructions printed on a home improvement product's packaging are often very vague and limited. They assume that the end user has some ballpark idea of what they're doing. Now that this wave of accountants, coders, and professional dog groomers have set out to update their Depression-era homes, it might be time to reevaluate the strategy. I cannot emphasize enough that if I am not instructed by the manufacturer to do something, I will not do it. My first attempt at staining my kitchen cabinets yielded this bizarre ombre result because I didn't know you had to shake the can of wood stain. My only defense is that the can did not tell me to shake it. Surprisingly, some of the most thorough and helpful product instructions I encountered were printed on a bag of mole repellent. It clearly warned against treating your whole yard at once, lest you send the moles into a tunneling frenzy, and offered a helpful diagram on how to apply the product in zones to systematically herd the moles off your lawn. Despite never having shopped that product category before, I began my new life as a mole rancher with confidence. Brands who are concerned about keeping the look of their packaging clean or insulting the intelligence of their target audience might want to consider providing a link or a QR code that offers more exhaustive instructional resources like tips and demos to customers who want them. Some projects just aren't beginner friendly. Looking back, I am appalled that I was carded for spray paint by the same retailer who let me walk out the door with a bucket of wallpaper paste. Someone should have intervened. Between the excruciating wait times for pro contractors and the fact that our entire savings just went towards the down payment, young homeowners are willing to attempt increasingly complex projects. But as with so many things, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Unfortunately, I quickly realized that DIY culture is fraught with oversimplifications. How-to videos that feature time-lapse footage of experts hanging intricately patterned wallpaper make it hard to tell if it looks easy or if it is easy. Brands that can present their products, or better still, projects completed using their products, as beginner-friendly will have immediate added value for DIYers. I actively looked for easy installation features in just about every product I purchased, but some projects still came with time-consuming and expensive learning curves. I was ready and willing to learn new skills, but nothing prepared me for how many feet of wallpaper I would tear or mismeasure along the way. Many DIYers will happily settle for a scaled-back version of our vision if we felt more confident that we could achieve it on our own, and we would enthusiastically purchase products that support us. Finally, here's the thing. As a novice DIYer, I'm not part of any brand tribe. All I see is a mystifying array of tape measures that cost between $5 and $43. I settled on the cheapest one that was as long as my ceiling was tall and left wondering how any functioning tape measure could possibly be $38 worse than another. It didn't take me long to realize that the answer actually has to do with rigidity, retraction, and the locking mechanism, which are all pretty darn important for projects that require precise cuts. Now, owning a professional brand of tape measure will never thrill me in the way that a KitchenAid upright mixer would, but I'm willing to pay more for the one that helps me get better results. You're right to expect that DIYers are less likely to shell out for premium products than the pros who rely on them every day, but that doesn't mean we aren't open to a value proposition. Because I don't have any preconceived brand loyalty, I'm relying on brands to explain which features make their product right for my project. Train me to have an opinion on something like a tape measure, and my purchase becomes about more than price. So whether you believe we finally stopped buying avocado toast or we just got priced out of metro areas, new homeowners are changing the retail landscape. As DIYers take up increasingly more space in home improvement store aisles, the demand for better customer support and education is only going to grow. Retailers, brands, and manufacturers that are proactive about empowering the next wave of homeowners will win the trust of the most brand-loyal generation of consumers to ever shop.